Just
all right, we are going. Holy crap. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Full Circle podcast. I'm T1G. Joining me today are Miles, Dada, and Dio. Everybody's here. The gang is all here. What is up, guys? How are you doing today?
fantastic. Ready for some Osu.
Hell yeah, dude.
Same.
You and everyone else.
I'll just open my mic real quick so you can hear what's up.
Dada's got dogs. That is pretty sick. So we've got a whole lot to talk about, and it's almost all about OWC today. We just finished up the qualifiers week. So we've got qualifiers results to talk about, and then of course we've got round of 32 matches starting tomorrow, and we've chosen a few of those to highlight and discuss and make some predictions on, so that should be pretty fun. We get to do our little predictions and see who ends up being maybe correct about some of these really tight matchups that we're going to be seeing in week number 1. But before we get to the OWC stuff, we did just have the ending of Circuit Championship. Say that 5 times fast, I dare you. And so our weekly love fest for Malashevsky will be starting things off this week. And so we're going to head over to Mr. Dio because, of course, C3 is his baby and his brainchild. And we'll let him, talk a little bit about what happened in C3, to get the kind of standings as well as the bracket stage and winners there.
Yeah. This tournament was basically a determiner of who among players who really dove into tournaments in 2022 and played a bunch of them was overall the best tournament player. And I think at the end of it, there's not really any questioning that among those who were in this tournament, it's Malashevsky, and it's not super close, especially when you get to really late stage pools. The round robin, Malashevsky went undefeated, 7-0, beat every single player that he went up against. The map score as well was not very close. I think he dropped something like 5 maps in the entire round robin. I'm gonna go grab the sheet real quick so that I can get exact stats on that. But yeah, it was not close at all. 7-0 to Reed Cat in the semifinals, and then 7-3 against Utami in finals, where on a pool that is harder than Corsai's closed grand finals, I know, because that was half-slashed intention with the pool, was to make it harder than Corsai's closed grands. He averaged 479k. Which is a bit absurd considering the star rating on some of these maps is up to and close to 9 stars. So he just kind of demolished everybody in the entire tournament. And yeah, by the time the round robin was over, he had lost a grand total of 7 maps in the entire tournament. He lost 10 maps in the entire tournament and won 49 of them. So he was 49 and 10 over the course of 9 matches, which is a little silly. Utami, very clearly the second best, won as well. I believe it was 7-3 against Karcher, and then did lose 7-3 eventually against Malashevsky. But those two are kind of your two ridiculous tourney players. And I think the best single score in the bracket stage was set by Utami. He finally full comboed the Corsai's Open Grand Finals DT2 from 2020, Scarlet Tempest by Nasty Children, mapped by Kite. The unnerfed version of that, which is currently ranked, had no DTFCs and no hidden double time FCs, and he set the first DT-only FC on the map against Karcher. So that was a very, very cool score, but unfortunately wasn't able to get quite as good a scores as Malashevsky in the actual finals. So it doesn't help us in terms of the MREC versus Malashevsky arguments, but you definitely look at Poland as a team that has some who will essentially be able to outscale anybody else in the entire tournament during OWC.
So the question, I guess, in my mind is just, is this 100% clear Malashevsky best tournament player in the world? Is there anybody right now that competes with him based on the result there on a pool that was beyond what you would ever play in a million years in a normal human being tournament. Like if this was like half a star less like you'd normally expect, is there anybody who beats him, or is he just like indisputable, like the best?
Well, if it were half a star less, you'd be playing on the round robin pool where he was also undefeated and dropped a grand total of 7 maps. So I'm really not sure. I think if you're looking at like, Corsace Open semifinals or something like that, you can go back and look at match costs and statistics from matches like that, and I think that might be a little bit more indicative because you have Utami, you have you don't have MREC playing because he didn't play until grand finals, but you at least have Utami and White Cat as well to compare to. But the only 2 players here who I think are even in the conversation would be MREC and White Cat, and among those, I think you're really just looking at MREC as the one player who there are any question marks about right now as to whether or not they're better than or as good at as Malashevsky in tournaments. So hopefully at some point we get Poland versus Australia. That's all I have to say.
the 1v1, dude, it's just Emmerich versus Malashevsky. Now, if you're like a pooler, so if you're a Dada or if you're Miles who's doing like some play testing and stuff, and you kind of have this slightly different style of pooling where C3 finals, and we'll discuss the style of pooling in OWC a little bit more later on, but C3 Grand Finals was like a caricature of modern slot pooling. If you're doing the OWC style pooling, does that open anything up even against this guy? Or is it still like, no, it doesn't matter, he beats everyone and everything?
It's kind of hard to answer.
If you're Malashevsky, whoa, woof, bark.
If you're a dog?
If you're a dog, you bark. If you're Malashevsky, you win maps. That's simple as that. Like, I don't think there's any pool hard at that stage that he's not like the clear winner right now. Maybe like a full speed pool, like something on Speed Cup, maybe. But like, it's very tough to see anything that's like specifically fair or fairer to other people.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think the anti-slot pooling style of pooling, where you have some more ventures into different skill sets within the same map, actually favors all-rounders like Malashevsky more than it would favor any specialists who might be able to beat him on a more specialized pool. Because if you have a lot of skill sets in the same map, then you need to be able to be really adept at multiple different types of things, which is already what the best 1v1 tournament players in the world do anyway. That's why he can win putting Funfair and like the Mazarin Hard Rock Tech map, right, in the same matchup against Utami, and only really lose but still be close on stuff like 285 BPM speed, right? Like, there's not really much to pick against him anyway. So if you are mixing skill sets potentially on the maps that you would want to pick into him in the first place, it can actually have the opposite effect where he just gets better because the pool is more mixed.
Yeah, and also you kind of have to mention that the OWC pools aren't really going to end up getting hard enough for the Malashevsky gap to really be visible. Just a disclaimer. Like, obviously, you're going to be expecting the most out of him, but I think at the level OWC is going to get to, you're also going to have these same expectations for the players like Utami and Emmerich and also Karcher up there, who are going to be able to probably put up similar scores to Malashevsky, even on the hardest maps that'll come out of OWC.
That skill cap is so crazy these days, man. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on this because we have a lot of OWC stuff to talk about, but there is the question that has been in my mind and probably been in a lot of people's minds, right? Historically, the 2 best 1v1 players in the past ever were probably Bubbleman and Vaxe. Like, I think most people are going to agree with that. How does 2022 Ristel compare to 2018, 2019, 2020 Bubbleman, 2018, 2020 Vaxe? Like, who wins in that matchup?
I think in terms of dominance, I feel like Malashevsky is still touchable by players like Utami and Emmerich, not nearly to the level that Vaxe and Bubbleman were in those eras you mentioned. Back then, there was nobody who could touch them. Maybe Idkey in the tourneys that he played, but I feel like it's a lot more fair. Like, Malashevsky wins today, but in the next tournament, I feel like Utami is going to be coming out with a vengeance and might be able to knock him down a peg.
I don't think either of them are touchable by other people, but they're just like the old duo. Like they're always going to be in grand finals no matter what.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I have no idea who wins in the matchup, and I think it's probably close right now because of how good Malashevsky is. Dada has died. He has perished.
He is, I think, trying to take care of a dog situation.
Yes. The one thing that I will say is that, among the major tournaments that we had this year, if you look at the players who participated in them and the winners of these various tournaments, Malashevsky won 2 out of 3 of the major 1v1s this year, Nick's Winter Cup and Charlie's Perfect Math Class. I'm not counting Roundtable because it was invitational. He did not win Yaz's Summer Cup, but he also won he won the Perennial and he got second. I mean, this is a player who is pretty clearly at the top of the tournament scene right now, and I think there's only a couple people who are even close. I think given enough time, he is a player that I would look to as approaching 2018, 2020 Vaxei levels of dominance, but I just don't know when that starts to happen. Because I think that he can do that. I think he's like 14 years old. If the dude spends more time playing Osu in high school, going to become that good. I don't think there's a question about that. The question is just when.
I still have such a hard time believing that the dude's 14. Like, I heard that for the first time a few weeks ago. I never knew, and I was like, nah, that's not right.
Osu
The prodigies these days.
Mm-hmm. Legit.
And what, Emrek is what, like 16?
He's like 16 or 17 now, right? Probably.
And Emrek, and talking about high school, Emrek is like ignoring going to school so he can play Osu more, which is kind of nuts. But the guy just like doesn't play all that many 1v1 tournaments, and so it's like hard to judge. Emrek is 14. I thought I literally was told 2 days ago that he was 16, but whatever. But yeah,
also makes sense.
Comparing across eras is like difficult, but it's crazy to see the dominance.
Apparently, no one knows Emrek.
Yeah, no one actually knows. I'd have to call up. I'd have to call up somebody from Australia and be like, "Yo,
whatever." It doesn't matter. They are both young.
They're young, and they're prodigies, and they have time to develop. And it's going to be crazy to see how they end up playing. In a couple of years. Emrek is 29. Okay, he's the same age as me. Let's go, Poggers. All right, so good job, Malashevsky. Congratulations on being a dominant 1v1 player. And as it turns out, he's also a dominant 4v4 player all by himself. Yep. As we move on over into our OWC, we talk about our qualifiers, and right at the top of the list is at the number 2 seed, coming out of kind of nowhere. I don't think people expected it. Is Team Poland in number 2 spot with Malashevsky doing unspeakable things to the qualifiers pool. Yeah. I don't know. Like USA, Germany, Canada are all unsurprising. You expect them to get top 4. USA has been number 1 every year that there's been qualifiers now. Germany, Canada have been consistently top 3, top 4. But Poland number 2 is a bit of a surprise. And what do we think that Malashevsky doing those things on that qualifiers pool that was very, very difficult means for their chances in the tournament this year at trying to get back to the top of the mountain like back in 2017?
Well, Poland has always had an issue with, to put it lightly, trolling in OWC. And I've talked to some of the Polish people. Malteser, my good friend, very, very good friends with the Polish people. And he told me that Malashevsky, being as good as he is, has actually been kind of a big motivator for a lot of the other good players in Poland. Like, you see Rafis coming back for another year, players like Mishny playing really well, Mastash, and also 2 new players, I believe, in BMG and YPAN for Poland. YPAN putting up also some very good scores on this qualifier.
YPAN's insane.
I think that we are, for the first time in a long time, seeing a very motivated Poland. And I think that's going to be scary for the rest of the world, because I think largely you haven't really seen that at all in the last half decade since they won in 2017. And although they are right now seeded number 2, so people aren't going to be like, unexpected of Poland playing extremely well, but I think they are definitely gonna. I think they're gonna rise to the challenge. Maybe knock down some of those teams that we initially expected to also do really well, like Germany and Canada.
Yeah, like Poland has always had a good team on paper. It's just that in the last 2 or 3 years, like they're either unmotivated or they have like inconsistency issues. And then this year, when there's just the rise of the like giant, the colossus that is Malashevsky, like everyone rallies around that and just starts like practicing really hard. Like they think they have a shot, and just knowing that you have a chance just makes your mental like so much better, because it's either like you know you have a chance or you know you have no chance. So you like you either don't get nervous if you have no chance, or you practice really hard if you have a chance. So like the Polish roster has always kind of been limited, because ever since like I'm gonna say 2016, 2017, they haven't really had a carry like that. Like they haven't really had this like this one guy who could.
That's me.
Yeah, that's him. No, who could like match their team to the other like favorites of the tournament. Like they've never had that one solo performer. Like stuff like the UK or Germany, like they've always had this one player who can like give them a shot. But ever since Poland won in 2017, like the US has gotten so strong that you really needed that guy to be there in Poland, and there wasn't. But now Malashevsky's here, and now Poland has a real shot.
So would you say he's him?
He is him. He's got that dog in him.
He's got that dog in him. And I feel like we had Poland at the easy 4 slot, right, in qualifiers or in predictions, and I don't know. It's kind of crazy to see like the impact that one player can have, I guess.
I think a lot of it also is like we were there before qualifiers. There were questions about Poland's motivation and whether they would still, be trolling a little bit around in qualifiers. But after qualifiers, I don't think there's many questions about their motivation for this year and how good they are, or how seriously they are taking the tournament again this year. So I think that kind of raises the expectations for the team overall, because Poland is always a team where, you could say, oh, they can pop off, but it depends on how many of them come to the match practiced or warmed up or, sober during the matchup.
Yeah, I mean, true story. True story. I was talking to Bartek about coming on as a guest, and he was like, "Oh, I'm going to be drinking then."
Yeah. So
it's like you can consider Poland as the Peru done right, like the Peru with backup around
Peru. If they had anyone besides Arnold.
Yeah, because we had similar performances. Arnold had like the 4th best score in all of qualifiers overall, but he didn't have the team around him, so he didn't even qualify. Meanwhile, Poland has like a really, really good player, and then the team around that to support. So same with Australia, actually. We can segue in.
Yeah, I would say Australia is one of the teams. There are a couple that I wanted to talk about, and Australia is one of them, where I don't think people were super high on them coming into qualifiers, right? We said 9th through 12th, which was like, kind of expected to do well, but that's just kind of on base skill. But the motivation factor was the big question mark. And they came into qualifiers and got 6th with... again, another big solo carry player with Emrek putting up absolutely absurd scores. I think he top scored out of the 22 maps they played, 19 or 20 of them?
Yep.
I mean, again...
Oh, no, he played all 22, actually.
No, I know he played all 22, but like his top score was like he was the best scorer from the team on all but a couple of them. And I was very surprised in a good way, I guess, to see Australia finishing 6th. And they've historically been a team, and we kind of talk about this every year, that tends to fall off a little bit. Like, they can get top 12, they can get maybe top 8. Do we think, now that they have Emrek, who is actually able to show up apparently for qualifiers, and hopefully will show up for matches, like, can they take a next step up and actually finish like top 6 or maybe even contest top 4?
Well, I think first off, we have to mention that it's very admirable after everything that this team has already been through, and the bracket stage hasn't even started yet. This team has kind of been put through the ringer in ways unrelated to the tournament, and they were still able to qualify at top 6. I think that just shows that this Australia team might be built a little different. And also, I don't think they have to face USA in quarterfinals this year. That's a curse they've had. They always have to face USA super early, and they'd always get smacked around by them. But I think this year they can make some noise, but of course they do have their weaknesses as well. Obviously, with the player that got eliminated from the team, they are now going to have a glaring weakness, especially on hidden. But with Emrek playing as he is, and I think with some of the ways the map pool are going to go, I think they can definitely make some noise.
One other thing that I do want to add, I think, Australia on speed has always been strong. They have a few other really good speed players this year. I think two things. A, some of the newer additions are relatively good for them. Arbuzin in particular is a big part of the reason why they were number 6 on that Hard Rock 2. He's a very, very good Hard Rock player and a very good low aim stream player. So I think he's going to help them out on some maps where, without that added bonus, they might struggle a little bit to put up a 4th player. And then second, it's not just Emrek who is popping off this year. That's going to be the big story. Of course, because he was rightfully so. That's going to be the big story. He top scored 9 of the maps in qualifiers for Australia out of 11, but the 2 that he didn't top score were top scored by Dumi, who has been around for a very long time and is looking in form. Dumi, not only top scored the other 2 maps that Emrek did not top score for them, he played 16 out of 22 maps overall, had 7 of those maps counted out of 11 in general, and still had a 600k average. So for somebody who has been around as long as he has to still be performing at that level, I think is something to point out, because it really does speak to just how well he is able to continue to adapt, to continue to play through some of the technical difficulties that he's had recently, and step up when the team needs it during a year like this, when they are, putting in a couple of new players and really look towards Emrek to be a massive carry for them.
Yeah, he's I don't know, like a motivated, informed Dumi is like actually so scary. I feel like I feel like he kind of gets underrated nowadays in a way, because he's a little less. He's not like a top player in most people's perception. Like, he's not setting crazy solo scores, but he shows up in tournaments and plays really well. And then one other team that I was kind of, I want to say surprised, but not as surprised maybe by, was the Philippines getting the 14th, edging their way into top 16 seed. They were one of those teams that we kind of clumped around 17 through 24. But they ended up finishing top 16, doing what? They got top 5 on Nomads 1 and 2. They got 7th on Hidden 1. Did not have a great time on Hard Rock or DT, but managed to make their way into top 16, which was kind of nice to see with a roster that got shaken up a fair amount this year. Now that they have Keeg and Nathan Ram playing really, really well, I don't know. What do we think? Like, is that a team? They have a couple of tough matchups early on, but if they make like maybe a losers bracket run, I could see them getting a decent ending result.
I did a little bit of a deep dive on the qualifier results during a stream that I was just doing on my own channel on like Tuesday night or something. And I think that this team is very scary compared to previous iterations of the Philippines roster, because they have Henry, who played 22 maps and had a 700,000 average score, so is like very, very good this year, even in spite of being seen as, not quite the same level as Emrek Malashevsky for good reason. But still, playing 22 maps and averaging 700k is nothing to scoff at. That is an incredible qualifiers performance. And then with Ramu being back in form, with Zone Luis coming back again, you have like a relatively good core roster for this team. And they had quite a lot of generally good scores in the qualifiers. Like you pointed out the Nomad 1, Nomad 2 scores, but then they also had pretty good scores on the Nomad 4, on the Hidden 1 as well. They had a relatively good score. There's some marked weaknesses for them, especially in DT and the Precision Hard Rock, but I think those are things they can work around early stage, especially in their first matchup. I think that kind of like, and we'll get to another matchup later, but I think this is a team whose success in the bracket is going to be determined by their round of 32 matchup. If they win versus Taiwan, I think they can make a top 16 run, and if they lose versus Taiwan, I think that they're just kind of fucked. Pardon the
Well, I
language.
don't think they're fucked. I think like their loser bracket is going to be a little bit like on the easier side. Because they have let me just count here. They're 3 seeds away from first, so their loser bracket shouldn't intersect. Maybe I don't know. But yeah, they have a really solid roster. I think like the fact that the qualifiers pool is like quarterfinals ish level, maybe a little bit harder even. Like that really plays to their advantage because usually a team like this, where they have a lot of skill cap, a lot of like some consistency issues, but like a lot of like potentially good scores. Like this is a team that you look at going into a matchup like Taiwan, going into a matchup like Russia, and you always like consider the upset. Like you consider that they could, on an ideal world, beat them because they have the potential to do so. They just have a couple of consistency issues. Like just having the qualifier pool be on that skill level and have them have 2 runs through, like that can really play to a team like that's advantages.
Just imagine this team with Hyok next year. He gets off military by next OWC. I think that's going to be if they can keep up this level with these players, like all also getting better by next year, and then you add Hyok to that mix, I think this team really going to be looking to make a massive push next year. And I think this year is going to be kind of a testing ground for some of those newer players.
I'm like excited, I think, to see how they do. And then, like you said, next year, if they keep the same roster from this year and get Hyok back, that's going to be terrifying. Now there are a couple teams a little lower down that I want to just touch on briefly while we're still talking about qualifiers results. So, firstly, United Kingdom 20th. Underperformance, or is that accurate?
Accurate.
I
hate to say it, like we had a couple run-ins with people on Twitter being like, "Oh, you're just talking about how they lost Bubbleman. You're not talking about the real team this year." Well, the real narrative is that you lost Bubbleman. That's why you went from like 8th to 20th. Like you went from top seed to like mid seed. Like the whole point of losing Bubbleman is that you no longer have the guy that pushes your average score up by, let's say,
like
300K.
unreal amounts.
Yeah.
Just absolutely. Like they lost somebody who we would have always expected to be right up there with Malashevsky, Emrek, Kriller, Arnold, Utami. And that kind of loss is something that really can't be understated because, again, like Dada is saying, right? What does that do to your average score? And also, what does that do to your placement on certain maps? And then in the case of teams like Poland, what does that do to your motivation, right? Like, if they don't have Malashevsky, they're not even in the conversation for this year. So, I don't know. I think the players on this team are still really good. You still have a lot of players who can pop off. But this team is also plagued by issues of consistency. Just looking through the individual qualifier scores for the UK, you can just straight up look at the DT maps and look at the scores set by Malteser and Majora, and they had incredible scores on the DT3. They both full comboed the DT3 in their best. But then looking at some of their other runs, either on DT2 or DT1, you have really high accuracy, but misses in the middle for Majora on the DT2, and then for the whole team, you have random misses on the DT1 that I think you kind of look at and say, okay, well, if you can't be super consistent on your team, should be able to abuse, generally speaking, then it kind of begs the question of how consistent can you be during a match, right? Which is a reason to think that this is more accurate than an underperformance. I think this team still has the potential to pop off and to win versus Norway. I think that's going to be a very close match. I think it's going to be a very good match, but it's hard to put a ton of faith in UK after the qualifiers.
You know what this reminds me of? Like, this UK team reminds me a lot of like the China teams from, let's say, 2018 to 2020, 2021. Like, they have a lot of these like potential 600, 700k players, but it never feels like one of them is like guaranteed to have seen anything. Like, you always have that little doubt creeping up in your mind, and that's kind of where I place them, like, skill-wise, to like relative to the tournament, relative to like all these other teams who have these players where you're just safe. Like, these guys are gonna perform. These guys are gonna play really well. Like, the UK just doesn't have that without the man of bubble.
The man.
Yeah, but I have two more things to mention about this team. One of them being they also lost Carthy, and we need to talk about the role that he played last year. As much as he was kind of rusty last year, he kind of acted as like a band-aid on the roster. Like, they always had three good players on a map. I would say, like on a hard rock, you can put Bubbleman, Majore, Kingling, and then your fourth would be Carthy, or he would be the fourth on the speed map. And he was the guy, I like to call him the band-aid, because he would always put up like kind of a decent score. Like, he wouldn't be getting the FCs, but he'd show up and he'd get like a 600k-ish score. And that was kind of something that they relied on a lot, and they don't have him this year. And the second thing I'd like to mention is that they have a lot of new talent on this roster that we don't really know what to expect from yet. I'd especially like to mention Plasma being one of their new players, I believe. He showed up earlier this year with a lot of potential. If you look at some of his aim plays, he is absolutely ridiculous, and we haven't seen him play that many tournaments yet. I believe he won Kanyo Cup with Badu's team, or no, never mind. Cut that. He didn't win Kanyo Cup. But he was picked kind of high in that, and people didn't really know. But I think he's got a lot of potential, as well as the other players. You kind of mentioned the inconsistencies, but I feel like it's kind of going to be a boom or bust thing with them. If you get a couple of them on a good day, this team is going to do really well. Like, if you get Blue on a good day, get Majore on a good day, get Plasma on a good day maybe, get Malteser on a good day, he's FCing every DT. But on the bad days where that doesn't happen, I think you're going to see this team kind of falter, but I'm really going to be hoping to see this team on a good day.
The potential is definitely there, so we'll have to see if they can kind of outperform the way they did in qualifiers. All right, and then just a couple teams that were kind of hits or misses for us right at the bottom edge here in the qualifiers. So we missed on, in the prediction stream, Thailand, Israel, group consensus New Zealand, though I was adamant that New Zealand was getting in.
Same.
It's interesting to me to see some of those teams make it in. I think it's really cool. Any just thoughts on those, the few teams that kind of got in at the bottom end, that anybody's super surprised or whatever by any of those few, like right at the bottom?
Like Thailand, everyone said,
Yeah.
They have in before, they might qualify. That's not even the player that showed up, as far as I'm aware. It was like some guy with three names, like three composite name with like three things.
Chai Fook Chep? Then?
Yes, that guy. That guy showed up. Like nobody expected that guy to show up. Like nobody was like, "Oh, watch out for my man Chai Chep." Like that's just credit to them. Like they have players who we don't know about that are OWC caliber. Like that's good for them. That's really good for the future of Thailand, even
Yeah,
Thailand.
it was Chai and Phantasma who was the other person who really showed up. Was like top 75 on the overall performance score. Played 18 out of 22 maps with a 600k average score. So like very, very good performance in the qualifiers, which makes you really happy for Thailand overall. I don't think they're going to be winning a ton of matches, but they have a chance in like a losers bracket round 1 matchup, right? If they do end up losing that round of 32 match, which is a pretty likely possibility. They're up against Australia, I believe. So yeah, good luck to them. Probably against Mexico in that losers bracket round 1 matchup.
Thailand, Mexico, dude. Who even wins that? That'll be a tough one.
That'll be a good matchup. That'll be a good match.
That should be a good match.
Yeah.
Losers round 1 is always really interesting because it's like the teams that were kind of that lower half that a lot of them are pretty similar. And then I do want to say a quick rest in peace to the first 5 team, the first 7 teams out, right? Netherlands, Belgium, Malaysia, Estonia, Peru, Argentina, Uruguay are all teams that can and have gotten into the bracket in the past and all missed this year. I think we were pretty accurate on most of those. I think it's a little surprising to see, though, Netherlands, especially, who have historically been a pretty solid team, not making it in. And then the others, Peru is kind of, we talked about team versus individual player, but kind of RIP to those guys because they're right on that verge where it's like a couple 100K here and there is the difference.
Our poor boy Kava.
I was really hopeful for Belgium for like Yoshi and Hanori.
Yeah.
But
Estonia is also a surprising non-qualifying team because their team was actually very good this year. Like Ansenth, Revo, Abyssal were all playing this year.
They had Abyssal back and they didn't make it. Didn't they not? They didn't have Abyssal last year, right? And they did?
No, they didn't. They did not have Abyssal last year. So that's why I'm really surprised.
Yeah, I don't know. That one's a weird one.
Yeah.
And then you have these other solo carry teams, right? Arnold on Peru or Akolabed on Latvia, where unfortunately one player did not end up being enough.
No.
That kind of proves that your players like your Malashevskis and Emrecht of the world, it's super valuable to have that guy, but you still do need a good team around them to get through.
Yep.
Go ahead, Moss.
Oh yeah. Also, I was about to say I'm surprised that Turkey made it without Raikaho. That's something I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't remember.
And Egemen.
I think I might have had them getting in. I think the ones I missed on were Thailand, Israel, and maybe Mexico. But I think overall we actually ended up doing pretty okay with predictions as far as who was going to get in and who wasn't. It's 3 teams, maybe 4 teams at the bottom. I still am sad that we didn't have New Zealand because I was 100% sure they were getting.
I had New Zealand in my pick'ems.
Them not getting. Yeah, I had them getting through my pick'ems too. All right, but we have round of 32 coming up this week. That's going to start tomorrow. So I do want to talk for just a couple minutes about the map pool that's going to be played this weekend before we move on to a couple of match predictions that we're going to do after that. So map pool format change this year. Big deal. Azer had the patch notes on Twitter before the tournament. Data is pooling the tournament. So we talked a little bit before about the qualifiers pool, but now we go into round of 32 pool. So Data, round of 32 pool, as one of the head poolers, thoughts on the approach to this pool and how it was put together.
So we talked a lot of stuff, right? This pool is ostensibly the least different. Everyone was oh, I'm so scared of this pool. I'm so scared of what it's gonna mess up. Our team, preparation, our team composition. This pool is very normal. You can look at the DT pool and be oh, that's interesting. That changed up a little bit. But overall, you look at this pool. This is very similar to a pool of the past. Number 1 is number 1. Number 2 is number 2. Number 3 is number 3. Number 4 is number 4. You know what I mean? There's not that much different. and it's a little bit intentional, a little bit just accidental. We have like the thing is we have a lot of customs, and when you, let's say, commission customs, it's not the right word, but when you propose a custom, you accept a song based on what you think the slot kind of maybe should be, and then people map the custom based on what the slot probably should be for them. So there's a whole disconnect there, and that causes a lot of customs to become a lot more normal than what you'd have if you just chose the map. Because when you choose a map, you know the song, you know the length, you know the mapping style, you know everything like that. When you choose a custom, you know the mapper and you approve the song. That's it. Like, it eventually becomes plausible if you explain to everyone what everything is in detail and like monitor that process very, very closely. But for a lot of this, it was just like the first map's done, or like a very early like completion in the custom mapping process. So people don't really have the idea we have necessarily, and then to change that and like force a map into becoming something else after the map is done is like it's hard and makes the map worse. So for a lot of these, we just decided to leave them as is. Like, I know people were surprised. Oh, this is a very normal Nomad one with, you know, sharp aim jumps. It was the first map done. Like literally the first map done in the whole custom pooling process was this map. And we were like, no, this map's fine. That's fun. And like everything else is just, yeah.
Talk about Hard Rock 1. Why is the Hard Rock 1 there?
Hard Rock 1 is there because when we playtested it as Nomad 4, everyone complained that it was not testing anything because the tech aspect was not techy enough. That's basically quote like word for word what people said about it in test playing. So we were like, okay, we have an existing map in Hard Rock 1 here. So let's, instead of binning anything, we don't want any drama. Let's just change this map a little bit. Let's change a couple of the tougher sections, and let's just push it to Hard Rock where it might find a place there.
You also, why is DT2 DT3 and why is DT3 DT2?
Because we changed DT2 on the Friday of release. It was my map. It's now no longer my map, and we changed that on the Friday before release, and we didn't bother changing the slots. But I explained it a little bit better in Maple feedback using really bad terms. The DT2 is less DT2 than DT3, but the DT3 is more DT3 than DT2.
Show these words to a map pooler or a tournament player from 2016 and just watch their head explode. They have no idea what's going on.
Real. I don't know. I guess the only other thing to talk about is there's a speed map in free mod. Thoughts? Speed map in free mod? Why is it in free mod instead of no mod? Let's just start
because
there, I guess.
Being a no mod is boring. Being in free mod means you can no mod and mod.
That's crazy.
Also,
why is my speed map AR 9.1? That is way too low
your
for me.
speed map is AR 9.1 because you, Zoomer brain motherfucker, can play Hard Rock to get AR 10.
Oh my god.
Just put it on Hard Rock. It's fine.
Yeah, just put on Hard Rock if you think
Yes,
it's
Hard Rock,
three
you
for
get
a
AR 10,
reason.
man. AR 9.1 is low AR now, I guess, for everybody who started playing the game after like 2017.
Yeah.
AR 9 is low.
There's literally a guy in this tournament called Zoomer, so I guess that's the target audience there.
That's true. Yo, Zoomer's the GOAT though.
Zoomer's a beast, though. He actually, I think, is a large part of the reason why New Zealand qualified.
I have been told he is quite dangerous.
Yeah.
all right. Yeah, I've heard some interesting things about him. I mean, besides the obvious, Besides the obvious.
Besides the obvious. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
Tiebreaker is like bog standard aim consistency, jazz weird stream shapes tiebreaker, basically. It's like the consistency tiebreaker.
Finally, no longer catching. Back to Iljaz.
The old version of that tiebreaker was insane. And I low-key wish we went along with that data, but every other test player hated the old map that was there. It was insane.
No, it was... I'll be honest, I kind of disliked the map that was there. It was another custom by Iljaz. He kind of just like collabed the other one after we binned that one. But like everyone... everyone except Miles hated that map and hated its existence, and maybe Azer.
It was sick.
Kind of like
trust me, it was sick. You're gonna see it in ranked sometime in the next 6 months, probably, and no one will be there to mention it to you. But people are gonna play it. It'll probably get like a user rating of like 8. But the map is sick.
The song is sick. I can tell you, the song is sick.
All right.
So I wanted to talk real quick. We have this overarching conceptual theme with the pools this year where it's looking to be more about maps that are fun and like interesting to play instead of this single skill set thing. And Dada, you did this in USC. Are you, to some degree, you went with a little bit of that style in USC. Do you think you get to apply what you kind of learned from pooling that to pooling OWC? Like, do you think that's going to be something that we will end up seeing as this tournament progresses? Or do you think that's just going to get like chopped down because we're going to just have 75% custom maps that are single skill set tests?
I mean, I try. Like, I'll say this very, like, I can't really touch on it that much, but I try. I am the chaotic force in the pooling team. Sayo also is a little bit more chaotic, but
you're judging by his replies in map pool feedback, that dude's chaotic as hell.
Yeah,
we are grounded in reality by everyone else, essentially. So we try. Occasionally we're like, oh, this map is really boring, and then like primarily we are the force that tries to like fight against the boring-ish maps. Meanwhile, like
boring.
Everybody, like Alex tries to ground us in reality. He tries to like keep every custom. Like if we can not bin a map, we won't bin it. That's kind of his philosophy. Meanwhile, I'm like, if the map is too boring, I'm okay with binning it. Same with Sayo. But yeah, it's kind of like we have a little tug of war going. Occasionally, we look at a map and we like give some sort of feedback, and then the feedback is completely different. Like Alex is like, "Oh, keep it up," and then we're like, "This is boring."
I don't want boring maps.
I don't want 7-star. I'm sorry, Tyler. I'm sorry, Tyler. I don't want 7-star Grand Senpai maps in my Mod 1.
But if the pool was all supposed to be fun, why isn't the whole map pool just graveyarded Akali maps and alt maps? Like, come on, that's the only fun
stuff.
True.
Can we get Synergy with like 18 E's as Nomad 4?
I need the entire pool to be AJT Yokespy collabs. That's all.
Reading players rejoice. Modern
It's
players
perfect.
punching air.
Everyone else just like collectively jumps off the bridge.
Yeah. I don't know. Have we talked about the pool enough? Should we go on to matchups? Because there's a few.
Yeah. Real quick though, Dada, what do you think is going to be the most popular map in this week? What are we going to see the most, and what do we think is going to be the highest scoring map?
Most popular map, I'd say, probably. I mean, traditionally, it's been one of the free mods. I think traditionally it's been one of the easier free mods, just because a lot of the lower teams kind of pick into it. I think free mod 3 might be one of those examples. Most like highest score on average. Oof. I mean,
TT3.
If you normalize it, I don't think TT3 is like highest score on average.
Yeah, let's say you normalize it.
Okay.
If you normalize it, I think maybe Nomad 4 might be Nomad 4 is kind of hard.
No.
Nomad 4 is
That
kind
is
of hard.
hard. I
Well,
get
that's hard.
500k on that. It's Nomad 1. That's gonna get FC'd a lot, I think.
I think it's DT1 if you're normalizing scores. I think Skill has it right. I think it's DT1 if you're normalizing scores.
DT1.
Everybody has
maybe.
DT1 rosters.
I think Hidden 1 might actually be a pretty high scoring thing as well. I
Hmm.
don't think the map is that hard.
One of those. It's gonna be a 1. 1s are easy.
Yeah.
All right. Last segment here. We've got 5 matchups that I want to highlight and want to make some predictions on because we've got some pretty close matchups for this week. And so the first one is going to be Japan and it's going to be Singapore. We have Japan coming in as the 16th seed. We have Singapore coming in as the 17th seed. You expect that matchup to always be close. Who do we think is going to win it? Dio is like chomping at the bit here, so we're going to go Dio
Hold on.
first.
I'm pulling up my pick'ems. Hold on. One of the things that I did in preparation for this segment is I did my pick'ems and I looked. The pick'em site is slow as hell this year, by the way.
Yeah,
I
it's
looked,
been having hella issues.
Yeah, I looked through the team high scores tab on the qualifier results and stats sheet, which has individual scores for everybody, accuracy for everybody, team score listed in order of team scores, and both runs for every team across all of the qualifiers maps. And I kind of supplemented that with what I know about the players in general. So I took like 3 hours doing my pick'ems for this week.
Bro, it's round of 32, man. Come on.
I'm mining class,
I
dude.
want my
Theoretically-
pick'ems badge. I want my pick'ems badge.
Yeah, theoretically, round of 32
So do
is
I, so do I. I lost.
the one you take the most time on because there's the most matchups, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's also like 8 of them that you can just,
Auto.
Yeah.
Yeah, just auto decide. I think what I had eventually was Singapore 5-3. I expected this to be an
Damn!
upset. Despite what we said about Japan being very good, I think this matchup is relatively bad for Japan because the things that you would usually expect them to be good at in terms of, a lot of the speed maps and DT1, Singapore is also really good at. They had very, very strong, very consistent scores on the DT1 and the DT2. They still had relatively good scores on the DT3 where Japan outscored them. While they didn't do super well on the hard rocks, they had an incredibly good run on both of the hiddens where Japan, can usually compete, but I think this time around will not have as good of a run. And then Singapore also just had really, really solid scores on like Nomad 4 as well. I think they have just a lot of different types of maps that they can pick into. The pick'em site is still not loading, so I'm just going to grab some screenshots I threw in a server somewhere and look at those. But yeah, I think this is 5-3 Singapore. I think that their roster in general is really good, really consistent this year. The addition and added strength of somebody like Eagle on top of the usually really good core of like Megamic, Dawnwing, Demonical, GS Blank, Seal, Tebi is really, really good for them. And I think Japan just got worse this year.
They obviously did get a lot worse without Varv, without dash like hyphen. I forgot how you actually pronounce that name. I always I never say it. I never say it. I just think it.
No roll pen either.
Yeah, no roll pen, but like I don't know. This I also have 5-3 to Singapore, and it's not because of any of what Dio said. I think they're all valid points. But my thought is just Singapore got a lower seed in qualifiers than Japan because their team starts like they start getting skill capped at around where the qualifier pool was. Meanwhile, they have a really, really solid early stage roster. They've always had this solid early stage roster. They always have these really experienced players that have like very good, consistent scores early on. Meanwhile, Japan, like that team, they have people like A Blue, they have people like Iger that have a higher skill cap, Dectopia even, but they are less consistent on the early stage pool, and you might not see them like getting as consistent of a score, as high of a score. So, like, I think Singapore takes this without tiebreaker, personally. Like, they just have the team built for this round.
I think that's also a good point about the early stage stuff. I didn't even consider that, but that just makes me also prefer Singapore more.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with Dada here. I think a lot of it depends on how well or how consistent Japan is on this pool. So unlike you guys, I picked Japan, and I picked Japan in tiebreaker. I think if Japan can get their 4 solid picks down where they can outperform Singapore on maybe an easier pool, if they can get to tiebreaker, I think they're going to win it, because I think Japan might just be the better aim team in this matchup with players like Konkon Kinnakon, Iger, Yama Darkness, also known as A Blue, Invoker maybe even shows up on those picks. I think if they get to, I think Japan wins specifically if they get the tiebreaker, because I agree with you. Singapore might be the stronger team on this early stage, but I think on this tiebreaker, I think Japan's got that dog in them. I think they're gonna. I think they could take it.
God.
I think they could take it. That's kind of. It might be a hot take, but I think it could happen. But if Singapore wins it, I will not be at all surprised, because they are also an extremely strong team this year, especially at this sort of stage.
Aaron, what's your prediction?
Yeah, okay, so I ran through their qualifier results, and it's kind of wild because they were separated by a total, like if using their best runs, they were separated by a total of 327,000 points over 11 maps and qualifiers. Like, that's messed up. Pretty how close they are. And like they have some maps where they're right next to each other, and they have some maps where they're like super on opposite ends. But I just kind of have more faith in Japan. Whether or not it's misplaced is a different matter, but I think on a team where you have like Invoker, TG, Iger, and then you fill in with like the rest of this roster that's full of really solid players, even though we're not at a skill cap pool yet, I still think Japan is just kind of the better team. I think Singapore can win, and I wouldn't be surprised. Like, this is one of those, it's utterly a coin flip. They literally have met once previously ever, and Japan won it 5-1, but that was like the most super different rosters you'll ever see. But I think Japan is a superior roster, and I think Japan wins this like 5-3, 5-4. It's hella close, but I think Japan takes it, and so we just end up being tied. We have 2 Japans and 2 Singapores, because of course we do.
Yeah. Well, close match.
Yeah, it's going to be a close one. Next one after that is Brazil and Italy, which is our 15 versus 18s. We just work one matchup away from where we just were. Brazil with 4 new players, Italy with 4 new players, and they get to add Arj, and they get to add Kirochi. But they have some interesting results compared to each other in qualifiers. And I know Dada wants to talk about this really badly because he's Brazilian. So I'm going to ask Dada for his pick first.
Okay, Brazil wins. No surprise there. I'm biased. But also, we consider why they got the seeds that they got. Italy overperformed their seed hard on Hard Rock. They had like a number 6 Hard Rock 1 score. They had a solid Hard Rock 3 score as well. Meanwhile, Brazil fucking tanked. Like, Brazil had like on the 20s maybe for Hard Rock 1.
32nd. 32nd for Hard Rock 1.
Wow. So, like, there is a clear point of like exploitation that Italy can use, and there's a clear like we are gonna ban this map kind of point for Brazil. Like, all I'm asking is if there's any Brazil player listening to the stream or watches the VOD, all I'm gonna say is you win this like 5-2 if you just ban one of the Hard Rocks. Like, please ban one of the Hard Rocks. Please, like one Hard Rock. Please, one Hard Rock and you win. Trust me.
They're banning Hard Rock, guys.
Oh my god.
Yeah, Italy did well on those Hard Rocks, man.
Yeah. Dada, you're gonna hate me for this. I'm sorry. Ooh. I have this match going to tiebreaker, and I think if it goes to tiebreaker, Italy wins it. I think if it goes to tiebreaker, Italy wins it. I'm sorry, Dada. I think, yes, definitely you're going to ban Hard Rock if you are Brazil, because like that is the single most obvious ban that you can have. That said, Brazil's Hard Rock 2 is still really good. They got like they got a 3-way FC on the Hard Rock 2 in qualifiers, which is like
Brazil got
very
fourth.
good.
Like they did really well.
But that said, Italy had 2 Hard Rock 2 runs that were within 100k of each other that were still around the 3 million mark. So like, you know, they're probably going to still ban a Hard Rock. But I think there's enough aim maps and enough alt maps in this pool that Italy still has picks even if the Hard Rocks are banned out. Because if you look at the overall pool, there's like Brazil, basically what I gathered from the qualifier results was that Brazil is really, really good at all of the tapping maps and Italy sucks at them. And Italy is largely better at the aim maps, but Brazil also kind of sucks at them. So you just have team comp difference in this matchup, I think, and stuff like the Nomad 1, Nomad 3, DT2 in this pool, DT1 maybe, Hard Rock 1 goes over the way of Italy. And then all of your tapping maps go the way of Brazil. I think DT1 is going to be close, and you still probably favor Brazil because they had like 2 really, really good scores on it. But it can be close, and Italy is generally good at the aim maps. And the tiebreaker is largely an aim pick. I don't think it's tapping intensive enough where there are players who you expect to carry on that sort of map do poorly. Like Arga is not getting tapping gapped on a map like that, basically. Ryuzaki is probably not getting tapping gapped on a map like that. So I think if it goes to tiebreaker, you favor Italy because Brazil has struggled with stuff like the Nomad 1, Hard Rock 1 aim and qualifiers.
Okay, so I'm going to have to agree with Dada here. I think in an ideal scenario, Brazil can win this match like 5-2 if they're smart with their bans. But I think we have kind of 2 scenarios that can play out during this match. Because I think when you line up these rosters, like if this were 1 round later, I would put this heavily in favor of Brazil. But we're not in that round. We are in round of 32, and Italy has a few extremely strong players. Like we saw Ryuzaki, Arj, Kirochi, and Shadow Moriko in particular playing really well during this qualifier stage. And I think in a stage like round of 32, just having 4 players who are freaking good and can play a lot of different maps in the pool is going to do a lot. Like, we aren't really seeing players being isolated down to their main skill sets yet. Like, Arj, obviously not really a tapping player, but I don't see him being unable to play this free mod 2 or something like that. But I think Brazil, like there's 2 scenarios I said. There's one where Brazil converts on their picks, bans smartly, takes maybe 1 or 2 breakpoints against this Italy once they run out of those more comfy aim picks, and then wins the match. But there is also the Dio scenario, which I think is also possible, where if those 4 players really show up and are able to take maps, maybe even a breakpoint off of Brazil, and if they can get to that tiebreaker, I would go to favor Italy. But I think that scenario is pretty low, and I would trust Brazil, especially with how players like Zubs played in this qualifier. Like Zubs played out of his mind. I haven't seen him play that well in a pretty long time. I love that guy. I love you, Zubs. You playing well. Win this match, bro. All Brazil, all the way. Campeão do Mundo.
Yeah, I think it's Brazil as well. I think top to bottom, they have the stronger team. If Ryuzaki, Arj, Kirochi, Shadow Moriko, like 4-way everything, then Italy maybe has a chance. But I think Brazil just has the better overall roster, and I think they're just more likely to perform better on kind of a wider selection of picks. Also, man, these teams both did really badly on DT3 in qualifiers. They got 32nd and 39th on DT3. So I don't know about the whole tapping thing. That's kind of a weird one. I think Brazil's just Brazil got 6 on Nomad 2, so it's like
they're very
whatever. It's But I think Brazil with like kind of their core players, and then we'll see how their new players, their couple of new players, but like I don't know. I think Brazil just is a stronger overall team, I guess. So basically agreeing with the group there.
Yeah.
So that's 3-1 Brazil again over Italy. Dio gets to make us all look dumb if Italy ends up winning this match. So
let's go.
He's got that going for him.
All right.
All right. Match number
3.
Dio has a moment here. Match number 3 is, I think, one that is probably a little less close, but I still want to talk about because the RNG factor in this feels kind of big. And it's Indonesia versus Finland. Largely because Finland has this gigantic new roster that a lot of people don't know anything about. And Indonesia lost their 3 best players. I think the outcome of this discussion is probably going to be pretty straightforward, but it seemed worth discussing because of the unknown factor. We had talked about this in a couple places before. So, Miles hasn't gotten to go first yet. Let's have Miles go first here. Indonesia, Finland, with the new look Indonesia roster, new look Finland roster.
Yeah, so for the new look Indonesia roster, one thing that I think needs to be mentioned is even though they are missing arguably their three best players, no Lifeline, no Skydiver, no Krez, and their roster is still freaking good. Like, usually if you take away the three best players of a country, their roster isn't going to look very good. But one thing I've learned is that Indonesia's player base is really deep. Like, that noob guy, he played 3WC for Team Indonesia. He looked pretty good. You also have Rexies and Dito, Ro, Ruto, and Fuma. You have those 6 players still there. Like, you're going to do fine. I'm not really aware of Mindfrost and Delon, but they should probably do fine. But Finland, obviously, I don't know half of the players on this roster. The players I am aware of are Freezed, Zeppe, and Emacetic. And I know those 3 players are extremely strong, and on a good day...
is Hank Sully. You might know him by that
name.
Kadzak,
yeah. If that's Hank Sully, I know him then. Yeah, those 4 players then are going to be extremely strong for Finland, in which case, if you were to create a scenario where Finland wins, I would put it similarly to the scenario I made with Brazil and Italy, where if those 4 players, and then even the unknowns, I don't freaking know anything about Desku, Jamin, Isaac, or Tekken, and if they play really well, and if those 4 players on Finland pops off, there is a universe where they can win. But I really just don't know enough about this Finland team to be able to make that judgment. And with the players I do know on Indonesia, I'm willing to just hand it over to them. And that's what I did on my pick'em. I think I gave him 5-2.
Yeah, I also have Indonesia 5-2. I don't know what I missed. If Dada has already talked about this team.
No, he hasn't.
Okay, yeah, because we were showing the house during that.
Oh, okay, nice.
So, trying to move, right? Yeah, I don't think this Finland roster really. I looked a little bit more into a lot of the players that I didn't know about, like Miles. I'm really unfamiliar with Desku, Isaac, Tikkanen, and basically all of these players are speed and stream players. So they just auto win basically every speed or stream pick in round of 32, but that's it. And there's only so many of those picks. So I think Indonesia just bans one of them and then they lose the other 2. They ban one of Nomad 2, DT3, Freemod 2, and then they lose the other 2, but they win everything else and it's not close. Looking at the qualifier results, it's just not close. So I think it depends a lot on how well the lesser known players on Finland are able to branch out into other skill sets, whether they end up getting more points or not. But I'm going to be more extremely pro Indonesia than Miles on this one. I don't think there's a universe where Finland wins this one. And I think this is a go LB1 moment for Finland, unfortunately. I think this matchup is very Indonesia favored because Finland's team is so lopsided in terms of the overall skill sets they represent.
I still have Indonesia. Let that be known. I still have Indonesia. I have 5-3 on my pick'ems currently. I think if you were to probably after the pick'ems close, if you were to look at percentages and in my mind the likelihood of upsets, the one of the most discrepancy would be this match because I think Finland has a real shot here. I think Finland can actually I would not be surprised to see Finland 5-3, Finland 5-4, or something like that. Their players are more versatile than people think. I think a lot of the mainstays Miles talked about, Freeze, Hank Selly, they're more versatile than people think. Meanwhile, Indonesia, the only reason why I have Indonesia and I'm not going with a full hot take Finland's gonna win is because they have also really strong versatile players. Fuma, Dito, Ro, aka SMH, Rexies, they're all really good, and they shouldn't be they shouldn't have problems with consistency. But this and the skill level of this pool makes it so that a lot of maps are just toss-ups. You can just flip a coin on some maps and that'll be the winner there. I don't think any of these teams really have a really, really safe pick. Maybe Hidden Chu for Indonesia, maybe DT3 for Finland or Fremont Chu for Finland. But I think both of these are still contested. So yeah, 5-3 Indonesia for me, but like watch out for this match.
And I think Dada was, you had mentioned in another server, like this match kind of potentially being that coin flip, which is why I'd want to talk about it in the first place. I was curious about that take. But yeah, I mean, I'm on the Indonesia side as well. I think it's probably something like 5-2, but I am curious to see what a team that has changed up so much as this Finland team has. I'm curious to see what they end up looking like, and especially like you said, early round matchups are just going to be inherently more volatile, right? Because the pools are easier, so the skill cap doesn't really come into play. That being said, I think Indonesia, even with losing their 3 best players, is just a better team, and so that is enough to get them a win here. And so that's a 4-way agreement. We have a consensus for the first time on one of these matchups. All right, fourth one. I guess we basically could have just gone into order. That's funny. These middle matchups are all so close. Fourth matchup is Philippines versus Taiwan.
Oh boy.
14th seed versus 19th seed. Philippines, we talked about a lot. They changed out a bunch of players, had a really good result getting 14th. Taiwan changed out 5 players, but they went back to the roster that they had in like 2019-2020 era where they did really, really well. And then they proceeded to get 19th in qualifiers. They were a roster that we thought was going to get like maybe top 8, top 10 in qualifier seeding, and they got 19th. So who actually wins this now that we're going into a matchup between these two teams on an easier pool than the qualifiers?
Who wants to start?
I can go first on this. Okay. So I think I've said this for like every single match, but there's 2 different matches I think that can play out here, and I think there is one where Taiwan plays to its highest potential and it goes maybe 5-2 to Taiwan, maybe 5-3, or there's one where that doesn't happen. Like this is round of 32. I think Riser, Dazzlewind, Shield, Zane, Flask, Spines Knight, Willie apparently being insane according to a few people I've talked to on more speedy, maybe some hard rock maps. But like I feel like my mind tells me this Taiwan team is sick. I was one of the people who put them in top 8 for qualifiers. This team should be sick. I'm going to ride and die with Taiwan even if they don't have Noriko, which has brought actually one of their biggest weaknesses in the Hidden mod. They are probably one of the weaker teams on Hidden this year. And I don't know if Philippines is going to try to abuse that. Actually, they will because they have Remu, but I think they're going to probably ban out Hidden 2 in this matchup, but I really think this Taiwan team should win this match as long as they play up to their potential. But otherwise, this Filipino team we mentioned earlier, they are scary. Like you bring back Zone Louise, you bring in Nathan Ram, Ramu playing extremely well, Henry being like an all-around player who can carry you and just lobby sit for the entire match. I'm not really familiar with K15 or Xylaws, even though I think Xylaws has played before, or Distant Waves. But Brony PH, Henry, Nathan Ram, Ramu, Kagano, those guys are scary. And if Taiwan doesn't play their best match, Philippines could give them a run for their money. But I'm going to go Taiwan 5-3 in this matchup.
I want to point out something really quick about this matchup, and I'll give my prediction on it as well. In the qualifiers, if you look at their scores head-to-head, Philippines smashed, and it's not even close. 5 out of the 6 nomads and hiddens, and then Taiwan smashed them right back in 4 out of the 5 Hard Rocks and DTs. The only contested maps in there between them in qualifiers were Hard Rock 1 and Nomad 3. Everything else was like giga one-sided. Like we're talking 500, 600, a million points different on DT2. Taiwan, like Miles said, managed to make this such a polarized matchup because they got so weak on some of these map styles this year with their roster change. If they had Shina Noriko, dude, this would just be over because they wouldn't suck at Hidden. Like they would actually have a Hidden 2-player on this team. But I think Taiwan should just be better as a team, top to bottom. on an early pool when you have guys like Shield and Riser and Flask and Dazzlewind who are and Spines Knight, like you have a lot of guys who are going to do really well in this. And I think Taiwan also just like so hella tapping gaps on or DT gaps, I guess. Maybe not tapping because Philippines inexplicably won Nomad 2 by 1,000,000 points.
Flame up.
Yeah, like I guess flow aim versus like actual just raw speed. It makes it super hard to pick, but I think the way that this pool is constructed, I'm actually like almost changing my mind now. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm like almost changing my mind. The way this pool is constructed, it almost favors Philippines, but I think Taiwan has like solid. I think Taiwan has players who will do better than they did in qualifiers.
Yeah,
I hope.
I
think they.
Yes,
if they
exactly.
practice the pool, I think there's like no way that they shouldn't do a lot better than they did in qualifiers. And Philippines should at best can do like the same because I think they did really well for their standards in qualifiers. So I think it's Taiwan, but I think it's like this is like one of those that could go to tiebreaker.
So I think it's Philippines, and I'm gonna add some nuance to the talk about the qualifiers results for these teams. Yes, Taiwan did the DT pool is like absolutely Taiwan favored, right? Like if Philippines does not ban a DT map, either DT1 or DT3, they're hard trolling. But the Hard Rock pool, I think, is much less Taiwan favored, and here's why. The Hard Rock 1, their two best scores were only 10,000 score apart, so effectively the same, right? And then the two bottom scores for these teams, it's actually Philippines who has a way better score. Taiwan, for their bottom score, got 2.2 million. Philippines on their bottom score got 2.6 million. So that is a far more consistently high scoring Philippines roster on the Hard Rock 1. And then again for Hard Rock 2, the difference sure is Taiwan favored when you look at the best scores, their best score being about 2.5 million and Philippines having a best score of 2.1 million. But then Philippines' bottom score is exactly the same as Taiwan's bottom score. So I think while the potential is there for Taiwan to win both of these Hard Rocks, the potential is also there for Philippines to upset on the Hard Rocks. And the question then becomes like, okay, who do you think performs better on the qualifiers pool? I think the motivation for Philippines is really good this year. I think the motivation for Taiwan should also be there after what probably everybody considers an underperformance for them in the qualifiers. So I kind of think that both of these teams have the potential to win either of those Hard Rock picks that are currently in the round of 32 pool. And then when you take into account the fact that Philippines have better scores on the Nomad 4 in qualifiers, in fact, both of their Nomad 4 scores beat both of Taiwan's Nomad 4 scores, and the fact that this Hard Rock 1 was originally supposed to be a tech map in another pool for OWC, I feel like that starts to really lean the matchup in the Philippines' favor, and I actually have them coming out on top 5-3. I think there's just more picks, especially with how dominant Philippines is, considering the scores in Nomad and Hidden, for them to go into during this matchup, despite the fact that Taiwan's roster on paper looked so incredibly strong at the start of the tournament.
Well, looks like the last one is me, the guy who placed this Taiwan roster to be fourth. Yeah. To say that I was a little bit disappointed by Taiwan's qualifier performance would be like an understatement. And then I got insider information that Willie had COVID and Zane didn't practice.
Okay, that's like Zane with practice versus Zane without practice. Yeah, is like
I'm not gonna say that affected their placement because I'm not gonna huff the copium. But also, like, that affected their placement. You know? I think that if everything goes right, this Taiwan roster is a top 16 seed. So this is like a matchup that you don't want to see in round of 32.
Yeah.
But all that said, I have Taiwan coming out on top 5-4. And the reason for that is actually very, very simple. I gotta huff my copium, and if they don't win this match, they're not gonna get top 4. It's simple. It's simple.
That's true.
But also,
they don't win.
Okay. It's
also okay.
I have this this feeling about this Philippines team. Like, I think they're really good. But as I said when we discussed this Philippines qualifier placement, they're a high variance team for low skill level pools, like early pools. I just have this feeling that they're gonna be a team that either gets a really good score in an early pool or just completely flops. They just have this perma 500 600k that you just miss once or twice. On a higher skill level pool, this doesn't matter. This is why the qualifier result was impressive. I think they might have even gotten a better qualifier score if they had a little bit better of a role, I guess, in their variance. But like in an early pool, I'm just giving the edge to the experienced guys. Like Taiwan, most of these players have been around for like 6 OWCs, if not more. Like Rizzer, Flask, Shield, all of them like extremely experienced, extremely consistent, and I'm not gonna say specialize in lower skill levels, but these guys play a lot of maps. These guys have played a lot of maps, and they play a lot of low skill stuff as well. Riser's a score farmer, Shield's a score farmer. Like they just have the experience in this matchup, so I'm just giving them the edge. I still think it's going to be rather close. I still think the Philippines have a very, very good shot of taking this, but I'm going with my gut, and the bacteria tell me Taiwan is going to take it.
Your gut microbiome going with Taiwan. All right, well, once again, that means Dio gets to be the odd man out. It gets to be our dissenting opinion for Philippines over Taiwan and also on Italy over Brazil. So he's going to either look really smart next week or the rest of us are going to just, have majority role.
Joke's on you, I'm not here next week because I'm moving. Ha ha!
Finally, last but not least, because we are kind of running low on time here, but I do want to touch on the last matchup, Norway versus United Kingdom.
Match of the week.
Possibly match of the week. This one is absolutely nuts.
Switch scenes.
This is not the sort of match you would expect to be seeing in the first round here. Hopefully we get over to our other scene here.
Switch scenes. Switch the scenes, Kava.
There we go. Okay. So we have a Norway roster keeping 7 of the same 8 players from last year, only switching out Fiel for Anthony W. You have UK, as we discussed, changing out 4 of their players. Norway getting, I think, maybe their best ever qualifier seed at 13th. I know it's up there. UK getting their lowest qualifier seed at 20th. We kind of discussed that.
Yep.
One of these teams has to win this match because that's how the game works. Who's it going to be, though? Because I literally don't know.
Well, I'll go first. I have this as Norway 5-3. I think that Norway's team is probably just better. I think that UK has very, very good speed players, but that the amount of speed picks in this pool being so low favors Norway in this matchup. Like UK has an extremely good speed team. I think one of the better speed teams. Yeah, Majora Malteser basically just wins them the majority of speed picks. But unfortunately, it doesn't really matter because there's only so many speed maps in the overall pool. And then Norway had like a lot of really, really solid runs through some of the trickier no mods, through some of the hiddens as well, and through a lot of the hard rocks. I think the consistency for Norway on no mods outside of no mod 2, because they kind of sucked on that map. Shout out to Penguinsy Floam. But they had like a really, really good hidden 1 score with Melvern and Drake, GN Yokespai popping off on that map. Of course, GN Yokespai hidden 2 is extremely scary for a roster like UK, which doesn't really have that kind of specialization. And then the hard rock picks for Norway are also relatively good. I think a lot of people who are familiar with the tournament scene would expect players like Malteser to be really good on those sorts of picks and Kingling to be good on those sorts of picks. But both of Norway's hard rock 2 scores beat both of the UK's hard rock 2 scores. So the UK doesn't even have that going for them with a roster like, Kingling, Blue, Malteser on the hard rock 2s, which really takes away from some of the specialization that roster has, and I think swings the matchup into Norway's favor.
I agree.
Yeah, no, I'm speaking
Okay.
facts. I'm just spitting. No,
He's
Spin
spitting.
bars.
I have, and this is full disclosure, I have UK over Norway on tiebreaker, but I am so worried about this. I am really worried. UK this year, in my opinion, is one of those high variance teams. And you might say, oh, why are they high variance? They have like this really experienced, consistent guy in Malteser. They have a really good player in Majora. Kingling, always also experienced. Blue has overall been a high variance player, but like across the OWCs he's played in, but he's also very solid. But like they just have so many question marks, and this qualifier placement just gives them one more question mark. Like, how many question marks can you collect?
Yeah.
And meanwhile, Norway, their qualifier placement, good, like solid. I don't think anybody expected top 16, but they certainly didn't like raise their eyebrows. Like everybody in this Norway team is solid, has good. No, don't say everybody has good early game, but like, Penguinsy, Marcus, Yolkspy, traditionally very good. Nindrake, also known as, I forgot his other name, Ninrik.
Nineric, yeah.
Yeah, Ninrik, Melver, Jompa Torman. I didn't know his previous name, but this guy is a beast.
Yep.
Like, if you
I
see
have
his...
to look that up every single time because I can never remember.
Yeah,
it's so wide out there. It's
Nielsen.
it's
Nielsen.
It's Nielsen, yeah.
Yeah.
I literally have to look that up every
He's
single
a
time.
beast. He's actually a beast. Like, the only reason why I'm giving this to the UK is simple. This Norway team has a lot of like speed players, and it's weird saying that. Like,
Yeah,
Norway
speed.
traditionally reading team. You ban hidden against reading team. It's always been like that ever since 2014. Like, it's been the skill set that this team specializes on. Meanwhile, now you have Ninrik, now you have Penguinsy, now you have Jon Patorman. Like, these guys are fucking speedy. What the fuck? Like, the traditional way of building the Norway roster used to just be like, oh, rely on this ban and then like kind of freestyle. And then they became like a speed demon team, and then after that is like, oh, let's specialize a little bit more in like the hard rock with Fiel, with Marcus. But like Fiel's no longer there, obviously, but I like, this team is just scary. This team is just scary. Meanwhile, the UK, which I have
also just scary.
It's scary, but for you, the better like bets on the UK to win. That's scary because you don't know what UK will show up. You really don't know what UK will show up. Like the qualifier UK this year, where they had a ton of motivation issues. They were clearly like not playing very like confident. Or if we'll get like the composed, consistent UK, reminiscent a little bit of like the Bubbleman leadership, where they're all like just focused. They're all just locked in and ready to like practice, train. I don't know if this qualifier placement affected their mental all that much, but it certainly did for some players. Like, I'm not going to name names, but it certainly did for some players, you could tell. But I still believe in the boys. I just still believe in this potential top 8 team that obviously didn't pan out, but this like potential top 8 team to just blossom.
Okay, so my train of thought went kind of similarly to Dada. On my pick'em, I did put this 5-4 in favor of Team UK. But the variance in this match is freaking insane. So I would just like to say the only things that I will edge to anyone is I will edge speed and hard rock. Hard rock is even. I will edge speed in favor of UK, and I will edge the AR8 hidden in favor of Norway, simply because the UK doesn't have a 4th AR8 player. I think they'll run Listia, Blue, Kingling, and probably Plasma on that, but I'm not sure how they'll do on that against a Yolkspie, GN, Marcus, maybe. Actually, you know what? Screw it. That's even too. Anything can go any direction in this match. I'm probably going to sound a little bit like I don't know what I'm talking about because, like, oh, why don't you know any specifics? Or no, everything's already kind of been said here. These teams both can win this match, but I think in a tiebreaker scenario, I'm going to trust Team UK here. They have a little more experience. I trust in them to come with a better form than they did in qualifiers because they are a team. I feel like they kind of soak in that motivation, and I feel like some of them. I'm looking at you, Blue. You're gonna get really motivated now that you got a lower seed in qualifiers. You're gonna come in. You're gonna FC every map on this round of 32 pool because you can, and I trust in the consistency of Malteser and Majore and Kingling. Those three players are going to be very strong. And as Dada said, I think I don't know what is going to come out of this Norway team. Like, I very much trust Yolkspie and GN to do well on their maps. I trust Nindrake and I trust Marcus. Marcus has been playing extraordinarily well recently in the tournaments I've seen him in. I trust him as well. But it's a round of 32 pool. These teams are both very good. And trying to pretend like you know what's going to happen in this matchup is kind of insane. So I'm just going to go with my gut that got me second place in the Pick'em last year and say United Kingdom's going to win this in tiebreaker. And you know what? High five, Dada.
And I'm going to pick Norway because I want Norway to prove what they're capable of. Yeah. I want them to live up to the 13 seed. I want them to show up and say, hey guys, we're really good at early round. We have a bunch of really consistent players. The skill cap of the team is basically irrelevant because it's round of 32 and these maps just are not very difficult. We've got Yolkspie, we've got GN, we've got Marcus, we've got the roster we've talked about a whole bunch of times. We've got a lot of question marks on the United Kingdom side. I do, unfortunately, not have a lot of trust in that roster as of yet. They're welcome to prove me wrong, but a team that has swapped out literally one player versus a team that swapped out 4 and then dropped to their lowest placement in qualifiers ever. Sorry, guys, no trust in you. It's just not there. I'm picking Norway. I'm not saying UK can't win. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm picking Norway because I just trust in their team holistically at this point in time more than I trust in the United Kingdom right as of now. Welcome to prove me wrong. Welcome to go on Twitter and flame me for not thinking that you're better than you are. That's fine. But I'm going to split the vote here and go Norway. So we've got 2-2 on Japan, Singapore. We've got 3-1 Brazil, Italy. We've got 4-0 for Indonesia, Finland. 3-1 for Taiwan over Philippines, and 2-2 again for Norway versus United Kingdom. We'll be seeing how we did on those because I think these matches are incredibly volatile. I think they could all go either way. I would not be surprised to see us be wrong on literally any of these, probably except for Indonesia, Finland. But that's the 5 matchups that we wanted to talk about this week, and that is our picks for them. And that is about all the time we have. We are running a little longer than expected here, so we're going to close things out there. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank Miles, Dada, and Dio for being here today. We're probably going to be switching things up a little bit next week with the hosts due to some IRL situations, so stay tuned for that. Next week, of course, we'll be back to talk about round of 32 results, round of 16 pool, round of 16 predictions, and anything else that may happen between now and then. So for everyone here at Course Ace and the Full Circle podcast, thank you all for watching. Thank you for being here. Best of luck to all the teams here in round of 32 OWC 2022. It's going to be a banger of a weekend. Matches start tomorrow, Saturday, the 22nd, at 10 a.m. UTC. Be there or be square. Match will be going on all weekend. Whole lot for you guys to watch, but you guys go enjoy that, and we'll see you all next time.
You didn't just say sheesh! No! That's not how we end this!
Goodbye, every nyan.